Joe, you mentioned something really interesting, which is specifically that, there were the three factors you spoke about that people generally don't seem to know about. And the first one you mentioned was the Pi Act. So without revealing too many spoilers over Stolen Ground 1, for those who may not have seen it, could you simply give a brief summary of what the Pi Act is and why it is so problematic?
Sure. The Pi Act is short for Prevention of Illegal Evictions from Illegal Occupations. That's a bit of an oxymoron, but it's in the name. It basically protects people who invade your property illegally. And not just that, the backstory of the Pi Act is that in the 90s, in the early 90s, the ANC made this legislation in order to prevent, it was supposed to protect people, vulnerable people. When they say vulnerable, they mean like mother and child and that kind of situation, or a pregnant woman or whatever. So basically, Matt, if I'm renting one of your properties and for whatever reason I lose my job or I can't pay anymore, or maybe I decide not to pay you, what the Pi Act is supposed to do is to protect me in the sense of like, you can't just evict me immediately. You can't just take my stuff out of the house and throw it on the side of the street, and you can't kick me out of the place. Even though I'm not paying rent, what the law says is, okay, Joe's not paying rent. Matt, what you need to do now is you need to go to court, and we need to go through a process in court so that you can get an eviction. It's trying to get both sides of the story basically in a very fair way, which on paper, fine. I actually have no problem with it. The issue is that South African courts are very slow and costly. Not everybody can afford to take someone to court. I'll give you a very good real life example. My aunt at the moment is looking to buy an apartment, and she found a place. She loved it. She was madly in love with it. But the owner of that apartment does not live in South Africa. He lives in Canada, I think, so, or overseas, wherever. And but he had hired a real estate agent to sort out the place and make sure the place is well kept and wada. And the real estate agent rented it out to individuals who hadn't paid rent in about 6 months, which is why the landowner was like, okay, these guys aren't paying rent. I'm not living in South Africa anymore. I don't want this headache anymore. Let's just sell the place. And so my aunt found the place. The people that were in that apartment said that they would leave by the end of the month, being July. And they didn't. They're still there. And
they're still there to this day.
To this day, they're still there, and they literally told the real estate agent they're not moving. Take us to court. And again, now that landowner has to cough up the money to take these individuals to court, which could take years, by the way. These eviction processes are not quick. They're not 2-3 months processes. They're years. And luckily, and this is how frequent it happens. This is something my aunt told me that I thought was very interesting. When they were first, when you're about to buy a place, you have talks and you put down an offer, and you got to sign contracts and what, because the banks have to approve it and have to approve the bond and blah. So there's a whole process.
Right. That's the whole legal procedure.
Yes. So during that legal procedure, my aunt saw that there was a clause that said, if the tenants in the current apartment choose not to leave, right, then the deal is allowed to be canceled and nobody is held reliable for any costs or whatever. So it's on the landowner it's on the landlord. That's what I meant to say. It's on the landlord to cover costs and to deal with the situation. So the deal is just, like my aunt doesn't have to worry about anything. She can walk away. But the fact that there's a clause like that in a contract when you're about to buy a place, just shows you how frequently it happens. That real estate agents and the law has to come in and say, like, okay, this happens so often that we need a clause for this in case it happens again to protect certain individuals. So that's the PI Act in action. And it's a real life thing that's happening right now. My aunt, unfortunately, she couldn't take the place because the landowner landlord has to deal with it, and she has to move on.
Right.
And
I'm really glad you gave that example.
Yeah. So going back to the PI Act, like, it's all good and well to try and protect the vulnerable, right? But what has happened is, because the PI Act is so poorly written. I mean, for example, J.P. Smith speaks to this in the documentary, that the PI Act does not clearly define what a home is. You have other individuals, nefarious individuals, that manipulate the system, manipulate the law. And they know this. They're aware of this. So, for example, if I jump over I don't know if you stay in an apartment, but let's say you stay in a house and you have a backyard. If I jump over your fence, if I manage to do that, and you're not home, let's pretend you're not home, you've gone away for 2 weeks in, I don't know, Spain. And I jump over your house or your fence, and I put up a tent. I'm now there, right? I've now made, in this tent, I've put like a toothbrush, a makeshift bed,
Right.
I'm getting quite kind of comfortable and cozy. You come home, and you see my tent is up, and you're like, what the hell? Who's this? You're not allowed to remove it. By law, you are not allowed to remove it. And if you do remove it, the PI Act says that without an eviction order, the PI Act says that you have to put the tent back, you have to reimburse me for the tent, and you have to give me monetary value to the tent. So it's like really ridiculous.
So basically, if the tent is worth 1,000 rand, just as an example, I owe you 1,000 rand.
Exactly. I can sue you. Basically, I can go to the cops and I can say, listen, this guy destroyed my house or my home, my tent, illegally. He illegally evicted me. That's what I could say, and you'll be in trouble, not me, because you didn't go to the courts and stuff like that. You have to go to the courts. The only way you can prevent me from putting up that tent is if you stop me immediately before that tent is erected, and even if I have, even if you've seen it, even if I've just erected that tent, and let's say I go to the shops, because I'm so cocky now. I'm like, I'm going to go to the shops, and I've left a toothbrush and a blanket there. You still can't remove it, because there's evidence that someone is occupying it. That's what the law says. So that's
very loose. So there's very loose interpretations of this law. So it doesn't just have to be like an actual normal house in the way that a normal person would think, that it's this 4-walled structure. You could literally have that tent there with the toothbrush and the mattress, as you say, and that all of a sudden constitutes a home.
Yep, and that's exactly what J.P. Smith points out in the documentary, is how loosely the law has been interpreted. He even gives an example of a tarp over your head with a little stick holding it up. That's deemed a home by the courts. So, and if you let's say, for example, it's a mother and child that are in this tent, you can almost forget about ever evicting them, because the court will look at them or take sympathy with them and be like, but where else are they going to go? So they're your problem. And if you do want to remove them from your place, the only alternative you have is basically supplying them with alternative accommodation, which means you have to pay a hotel room, I don't know, guest lodge, wherever, for them to leave. The court will be okay with that, as long as they're okay, they're safe, they've got shelter. The court will say, okay, well, then provide them alternative accommodation, and they can leave your premises. So that's a few examples of the absurdity of the PI Act, and if people want to know how it is really manipulated to politically, then please go watch the documentary, because there's shack farming, there's syndicates, there's politicians involved, allegedly. So yeah, there's a lot more to this story, and that's why I want to do a 2 and a 3, is because it's not just the PI Act. The PI Act is definitely a legislation that allows for manipulation and nefarious people to operate in doing these nefarious things and these illegal things. But every land invasion, I think, has its own story and its own. It's almost like the PI Act was written. Maybe at the time. Okay, I'll give credit, or I'll give it benefit of doubt. Maybe in Nelson Mandela's ANC, there was this idea of, let's make an act to prevent apartheid era transgressions from happening
Removals,
again.
we could call it.
Yes. Yeah. We don't want that to happen again. So let's make this PI Act to try and protect those people. Okay, fine. I can give benefit of the doubt for that. I agree with that. Let's not let that happen again. There does need to be some protection to the illegal occupier to some degree. Like, for example, like, you can't kill the person, right? But that's right. Murder. That's already protected.
But then I guess, anyway, Joe, the problem there is, yes, we could say that certain protections are needed, but surely those protections have to be limited, because it takes me back actually to the example you gave with your aunt who wanted to buy that property, and there were people who were there for what you said, about 6 months, correct? Without paying.
Roughly about 6 months, yeah.
Yes, and it just makes me think, well, if I'm looking to invest in South Africa, say I am interested in the property market, what guarantee is there that I'm going to be able to rent my place out, keep getting rental income, not have a problem, not have some sort of illegal occupancy? I mean, this is hugely problematic.
No, it is, and look, you're not the first one to bring this up. I again, in the documentary, I do try and go over some solutions to the PI Act issue, and there are some political parties that are trying to find solutions. One of them is the DA is trying to change the PI Act or amend the PI Act on a national level, and the other one is the Referendum Party is trying to basically revoke the PI Act in the Western Cape specifically. Now, there's a lot of debate as to whether or not the Referendum Party can do that, and a lot of question around provincial legislation and all that stuff. But it's neither here nor there. The point is that you are absolutely correct, that this does harm investor confidence. People who, may want to buy a house now, they think, do I really want? I mean, look at my aunt. She's discouraged now. She's like, I don't know if I want to now look for a place, and she's seen my documentary as well. So when this was happening to her, she was like, it's your documentary, Joe. Your documentary is happening in real time with me. Right. So I think the PI Act and what's happening now and what's highlighted in this documentary, I think the important thing that people need to remember is that one mustn't be discouraged. I think, if we constantly live in that state of like, well, what's the point, then you're not going to live, right? You're not going to live. Or you could just go to, Clifton Beach or Clifton or Camps Bay or Sea Point and just jump a wall and set up a tent in someone's backyard. You'll be fine. I'm kidding. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think one thing I just want to get across as well is that while people or individuals with very powerful influence manage to manipulate the PI Act, there are definitely more. The point I was getting at earlier with Grabau and Hermanus is each land invasion has a story to be told, and I'm starting to pick up from Rabaul and Hermanus that those ones have different motives, very interesting motives,
Sure.
and are, I wouldn't say completely different, because I think the Pi Act, the Pi Act, I'm not going to, obviously now that I've dived into the Pi Act, I'm not going to go again into the Pi Act with the second and third one. But there are other legislations in South Africa that also cause problems in tandem with the Pi Act.